drugs that increase cholinergic or acetylcholine transmission will increase focus and cognition. Acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter that at the neuron to muscle connections, the so-called neuromuscular junctions, is involved in generating muscular contractions of all kinds for all movements. Acetylcholine is also released from two sites in the brain, and those two sources of acetylcholine collaborate to activate particular locations in the brain and really bring about a tremendous degree of focus to whatever is happening at those particular synapses. One such compound is so-called Alpha GPC, which is a form of choline and increases acetylcholine transmission. Dosages as high as 1,200 milligrams per day, which is a very high dosage, spread out. Typically, it's 300 or 400 milligrams spread out throughout the day, have been shown to offset some of the effects of age-related cognitive decline, improve cognitive functioning in people that don't have age-related cognitive decline. That's a very high dose. Typically, when people are using Alpha GPC to study or to enhance learning of any kind, they will take somewhere between 300 and 600 milligrams. That's more typical. Again, you have to check with your doctor. You have to decide if the safety margins are appropriate for you. Obviously, you'll want to check that out. But Alpha GPC is effective in creating more focus by way of this cholinergic system. It stimulates acetylcholine release from both of those locations, the PPN in the back of the brain and nucleus basalis in the front of the brain. So if one wants to increase the amount of dopamine transmission in the brain and body for sake of increasing concentration and focus, one of the most efficient ways to do that is by ingestion of the amino acid l-tyrosine. L-tyrosine is an amino acid precursor to L-dopa, so it lies further up the dopamine synthesis pathway. And nowadays, it's very common because L-tyrosine is sold over the counter in the United States, that people will take L-tyrosine as a way to get more energized, alert, and focused. Indeed, there are data that L-tyrosine will accomplish that. L-tyrosine is typically taken in capsule form or powder form, anywhere from 500 to 750 to 1,000 milligrams. It is a potent stimulus for increasing dopamine, and the time scale for increasing dopamine is about 30 to 45 minutes after ingestion. Dopamine levels start to peak. Again, L-tyrosine can be derived from food sources. I invite you to look up those various food sources on the web. Simply go to a web browser and put in foods that contain a lot of L-tyrosine, and you'll get a rich array of choices to select from. But in my case, I use L-tyrosine in capsule form. I will take 500 milligrams of L-tyrosine, 300 milligrams of Alpha GPC, and a cup of coffee. I'm careful to do this early in the day, certainly not after 2 or 3 p.m. because I don't want to diminish my ability to fall and stay asleep that night. Do this early in the day before a workout or before a bout of concentrated mental work. Again, I tend to do this about 4 days per week, so certainly not every time I sit down to do work. Now, there's one other compound that I've used from time to time and that I continue to use in order to increase focus and concentration. And I will use this in combination with the other supplements I talked about before, and that's phenylethylamine. Phenylethylamine is in the dopamine synthesis pathway, so it increases dopamine transmission and tends to function a little bit differently than L-tyrosine. So every once in a while, I'll swap out L-tyrosine and put in 500 milligrams of phenylethylamine, or sometimes if I really want to push a little bit harder on the dopamine system, and I'm going to be doing a long bout of intense work, I will take the 300 milligrams of Alpha GPC, the 500 milligrams of L-tyrosine. I'll generally take that with some caffeine. And I should mention, I don't go past about 100 or 200 milligrams of caffeine because I don't really like feeling too jittery. That's not really my goal. It's the goal to be alert, but not so alert that I really can't focus on anything. I'm not interested in having an anxiety attack after all. But I'll sometimes either swap in or I will add that 500 milligrams of phenylethylamine. And it's a very short-lived compound, so what I'll tend to do is take it once at the beginning of the work bout, and sometimes in the middle of the work bout, I'll take another 500 milligram capsule. But what I just described of combining all of those compounds, Alpha GPC, L-tyrosine, phenylethylamine, and caffeine, that's a fairly rare occurrence that I'll combine all four, and really only under conditions in which I have to do an intensely challenging bout of mental or physical work. I would say the frequency at which I combine all four of those things is probably about once every 2 weeks, and typically more like once a month. Again, being careful to do that in the early part of the day, certainly before the noon hour, so that I am in no way going to disrupt my sleep.